Hi, this is Bill Carmody with a review of cadences and non-harmonic tones. Cadences are that point in the music which mark the end of a phrase, the end of a complete musical thought. It's a spot where the harmony, the melody, and the rhythm all pause at the same time. A rhythmic cadence is just concerned with the rhythm, and it usually ends with either a longer note or a rest, and it's usually on an even numbered measure. Bump da da dum da da dum bum bum da 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 dum bum bum ba. Ba da dum bum 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 bum. So that little break in there, that was a rhythmic cadence. The harmonic cadences, there are four types. An authentic cadence or a full cadence, and it has a chord progression of 5-7 to 1 or 5 to 1. It's a dominant to tonic. A half cadence is a cadence that ends with a 5 chord instead of a 1 chord. A plagal cadence is a chord progression 4 to 1, and a deceptive cadence is a chord progression 5 to 6. Remember, these chord progressions only happen at the cadence point where the rhythmic cadence is. Usually measure 4, measure 8, like that. There are two types of authentic cadence, a perfect authentic and an imperfect authentic. Both are 5 to 1. An authentic cadence is a 5 to 1 cadence. But a perfect authentic has both chords, the 5 chord and the 1 chord, are in root position, and the soprano always ends on the tonic. In major, that's do. In minor, that's la. An imperfect authentic cadence is again a 5 to 1 cadence, but it has at least one of these three conditions. It only needs one of them. It can have more. Either chord, the 5 chord or the 1 chord, is an inversion. 2, the soprano does not end on the tonic. Or 3, they use a 7 chord, a leading tone chord, instead of a 5 chord. So if either of those three things are present, then it's an imperfect authentic cadence. Still has to be a 5 to 1 or a 7 to 1 chord progression in order to be authentic. Now, non-harmonic tones. These are notes that are not part of the chord, thus the name non-harmonic, because they're not part of the harmonies, but they embellish a chord tone. And there are 8 kinds of them, 8 different types of non-harmonic tones, and you should be familiar with all of them. You should be able to name all 8 without any reference, just out of your own little head. Here are the 8 non-harmonic tones: passing tones, neighboring tones, escape tones, anticipation, suspension, appoggiatura, changing tones, and pedal tones. And this list shows the abbreviation. This is what you would put when you analyze the music to identify a passing tone or an anticipation or a changing tone. You would use this abbreviation. You need to know how each non-harmonic tone is approached. How do you get to it? And how is it resolved? How do you leave that dissonance? These are all dissonances because they're not part of the chord. And whether this kind of non-harmonic tone is stressed or unstressed, accented or unaccented. Some, like passing tones and neighboring tones, can be either accented or unaccented. Suspensions and appoggiaturas are only found on strong beats, and escape tones and anticipations and changing tones are only found on weak beats, and some can be either. Here's a sample quiz. These are the type of questions you'll see on the quiz, which I've reviewed a little bit in here, the 3 conditions which make for an imperfect cadence. The chord progressions, the Roman numerals for each type. So an authentic cadence is 5 to 1, a deceptive cadence is 5 to 6, plagal cadence is 4 to 1, and a half cadence is anything, but it has to end on a 5 chord. We use a dotted curved line. Remember, in macro analysis, if the roots progress up or down a half step or are a tritone away, we use a solid curved line if the roots progress down a fifth, down a perfect fifth, circle progression. So this chart that I mentioned, you got to memorize that chart. And here's the bonus. Here's the answer to the bonus question for checking out this podcast. The dates and names for the 4 musical style periods are: the Renaissance goes from 1400 to 1600. The Baroque period goes from 1600 to 1750. That's the year Bach died. The Classical period goes from 1750 to 1825. The Romantic period goes from 1825 to 1900. And they call the 1900s the 20th century, or the music that's being played now, they just call it contemporary. Well, good luck on your quiz. Bye-bye.